All right, let's have a look at the mind map. Okay, so just a few things to point out. Having done this is the third video, I think I've gotten a bit more of an understanding of how this could be done in a slightly better manner. And one way to do that is for you to have your slides with you. So your slides could be open on one device and you're watching this on another device, and then also having a map of the place should also be quite useful if I'm referring to certain things. And if you were students in my class, you might also have a timeline that you can put out there, and it's quite handy as well. Right, so we are jumping straight on to a divided Vietnam. Okay, over here. Okay, this would be where you should be assessed from. So the textbook may start with origins of the Vietnam War, where they are really talking about what things were like before 1954. Okay, how the Ho Chi Minh's Viet Minh resisted the French reoccupation of Vietnam, and then this culminated in a set piece battle at Dien Bien Phu, which the French were routed, and this was followed up by the Geneva Conference, in which the Vietnam was divided, and that's actually where we begin. Right, some aspects of the Geneva Conference would be that the Viet Minh would occupy North Vietnam under Ho, and the non-communist South Vietnam under Prime Minister Ngo Dinh Diem. Elections would be held by 1956. So that was the decision of the Geneva Conference. I think, the South had no real intent to honor it, and what we instead saw would be that the South essentially tried to consolidate their power, and this was with American approval. America knew that their ally would not stand to win in the elections, so America was not, at least we know that they were not insisting on the South to actually conduct any elections. So now you have the situation of a Vietnam that is divided, the North and the South, along the 17th parallel. So the first thing we are going to learn about would be what the two Vietnams were like immediately after 1954. Both of them had differing ideology, differing visions of an independent Vietnam. And despite the fact that Vietnam is divided, both governments actually tried to consolidate their own respective power, and very much through authoritarian means. Right. If you are looking at the map, okay, just make sure you see how things are like. So North Vietnam, I guess some things that we want to mention about them in the 1950s. Okay, maybe we will expand a bit. Shift this over. Yep. Yeah. Led by Ho. That's not how you spell it. Okay, he practiced land reforms. All right. So sweeping land reforms. All right. Land was confiscated from larger landowners, redistributed to the peasant farmers. Landlords placed on show trials. All right. This phrase show trials were a lot more popular in the previous syllabus because it was something Stalin also did. And the chaos of the land reforms actually caused a decline in agricultural produce, all right, which actually also led to some starvation and famine, resistance from the landowner class. So it wasn't as though it was a smooth sailing. There would have been people who would have appreciated the land reforms, but at the same time, it was also met with some form of opposition. Right, so that's North Vietnam. All right, they were implementing communist reforms within the country. They're trying to consolidate their power base. All right. How about South Vietnam? So for South Vietnam, right, just to contrast with host land reforms, there were no such reforms in South Vietnam, right? So the part here about unpopular and corrupted regime, failure to introduce land reforms, right? And really, it was a very big problem in Vietnam where a lot of the land were controlled by the land owning class, and the farmers were tenant farmers. The farmers were a very small proportion of the farmers were a large proportion of the country, but were not owning any land. So America did try to pressure them to introduce land reforms to the poorer farmers, but okay, Dim was he had received support from landowners, right, and therefore he did not want to, right, affect his power base, his supporters themselves. So although some land reforms were carried out, it was not far-reaching, and yeah, the landlords, when the landlords resisted, Dim would not have tried to force the matter. He did try to implement modernization, all right, with the construction of universities, yeah, and expansion of agricultural space. So already here, I mean, for students who are answering questions, if you are in the 4N, explain why the insurgency against President Zim broke out. Yeah, it's possible you can talk about land reforms in one paragraph. Similarly, those who are answering about why the insurgency broke out, for the Express as well, you could use the failure to do these economic reforms as one. Then for President Zem, the other aspects of his rule that were unpopular, his rigged referendum. So this was the story about how he came in as prime minister, but in July 1955, okay, nationwide elections, or not nationwide, South Vietnam-wide elections. The first thing we need to mention, July 1995, the Vietnam-wide elections, not done, not held. Okay, both, I think the North were a lot more keen on doing this, the South, knowing that they don't really stand a chance. Ho was a lot more popular. Ho was very much seen as a nationalist figure, and yeah, President Diem was bogged down by the fact that he was essentially seen as an American stooge, an American puppet. So with majority of the population also not liking his background as well. So he was not expected to win. So he didn't have the election. So that could also be a reason why the insurgency broke out, right? The frustration there. And when he did have in October, the referendum to remove Bao Tai as who is the former emperor as head of state, and then he appointed himself. It was a rigged election because there were accounts whereby more people, the number of votes outnumbered the number of people in some villages, meaning like, for example, a village had 100 people, but 150 somehow voted in favor of President Zim coming into power as the as the figure to replace Mao Tai. Okay, so yep, unpopular there. The examples of his unpopularity is quite easy to remember. All right, he employed nepotism, all right, which is the practice of introducing or appointing your brothers, your family members, your allies into key positions, all right, and then all his diplomats were all pro were all pro-Catholic because that was his, yeah, because he was Catholic, and it was a very much a largely Buddhist country. So of course, the pushback from the Buddhist community was significant, uh, and yeah, the widespread protest by the Buddhist monks who to the point of self-immolation. All this contributed to the unpopularity of President Zim. All right, so moving on. So these two, right, these two factors here. Yeah, I'm gonna just change the color a bit. Yeah, this one. I'm serious. It looks so much better this way. Right, these two factors that I circled could be easily used as two paragraphs to explain why the insurgency broke out. For express students, if you know if you're asked about failure to do reforms, that a failure to do economic reforms could be, if that was the question, that is a given factor, you can talk about that, and then the other side could be the failure to do political reforms, right, as to why the insurgency broke out. Okay, key aspects of the insurgency, we'll just type it out here. Yeah, so who were the people who disliked President Zim? You had the Buddhist monks, former members of the Viet Minh, all right, who were based in the south. Right, and their strategy was very much guerrilla warfare. Let's put it here, guerrilla warfare. All right, whereby their intent was to do hit and run attacks and not to actually take over enclaves or villages permanently. All right. Other key developments in this time period, May 1959, the setting up of Group 559, which was setting up a specialized unit of the North Vietnam Army, whose job was to transport the weapons, basically a supply infrastructure, transport weapons, so on and so forth. And this one gave rise to the Ho Chi Minh Trail, because in order to do that, you have to actually find a way to bring things from the north down to the south. All right, so eventually the formation of the Viet Cong, all right, who will identify as the main people fighting the South Vietnamese army. In the course of this time period, the Viet Cong, who took instructions mainly from the north, carried out a series of assassinations, over 1,700. They targeted anyone associated with South Vietnamese government, police officers, officers of law, all right, and of course they went through the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The NVA, the North Vietnamese Army, supported the Viet Cong through the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So later on, we'll see how America tries to deal with this. Right, moving on. We'll talk about the escalation. So it's a bit packed and cramped here. The escalation of tensions between the North and South Vietnam. So that would be, escalation of tensions between North and South Vietnam. All right, so I reassign it in this manner: actions of local agents in causing an escalation. So who are these local agents? What's this escalation that they are taking part in? So local agents, we are really talking about the Viet Cong. These are the main people fighting. The two sides will be in this particular South Vietnamese insurgency. The two sides that who are mainly fighting will be Viet Cong versus the South Vietnamese army. All right, and the role played by the North would be to supply the Viet Cong with supply with whatever that was necessary. And this could also come in the form of fighters, all right, meaning the North could supply the Viet Cong with reinforcements as and when. Right, so that was the North supporting the South. So just the NVA supported Viet Cong. Okay, just to make sure we know who are the characters involved. Okay, then you have on the other side, okay, how this became increasingly seen as a proxy war. Right. Okay, a few more things about the local agents, right? Okay, so to understand how the war actually looked like, the Viet Cong and the NVA, they will attack South Vietnamese government forces, officials, buildings. They often chose to avoid well-defended South Vietnamese positions. So when they are conducting their attack, they will sometimes target what we call soft targets or softer targets. All right, they attack American Air Force supply bases. Okay, and of course, in response, all right. So maybe we just add that in Viet Cong attack South Vietnamese bases and U.S. supply bases. Okay, the South Vietnamese responded with their strategic hamlet program. Right, basically they took a leaf out of the Malayan emergency, right, to try and relocate peasants, all right, and then to relocate them into villages that they can actually encircle and protect. The idea is that they wanted to isolate and separate the Viet Cong from the South Vietnamese villages so that they could find it easier to target the Viet Cong. Right? Unfortunately, moving people around is difficult. Right? And of course, it will bear a lot of resentment, although as a military strategy, it would have given the South Vietnamese army, who would be better armed, make it easy for them to actually target the Viet Cong. Right? So yes, that's pretty much between 1954 1964, or when the key escalation was 1957 to 1964. Okay, then we talk about the external players. I think by now, if those who have the experience of looking at the Korean War, which I know is not for everyone, right, what was China's role here, or what was China most concerned about? Yeah, after the victory, communist victory in China in 1949, Mao saw America as his greatest threat, concerned about the possible invasion by American allies. Right, so Mao believed that if Vietnam became non-communist and allied with US, China was vulnerable. So it's the same kind of thinking. If America would occupy territories adjacent or around China, that would be a threat. They needed that buffer. Right, so essentially, to sum it up, for strategic defensive reasons against the USA, I don't know why I have to say show support to a communist state. Okay, there was also a feeling of a bond of loyalty to who had tried to be as helpful as possible when the Chinese Civil War was taking place. All right, right, but such personal sentiment at times we don't know how much to value it, and also the sense that the Vietnamese and the Chinese people, they share a lot of commonality, so it was seen as helping a fellow, right, more than just fellow Asian in their fight against the Americans. So that was that. Soviet Union, okay, Soviet Union will not be under Stalin at this point of time, but Soviet Union, of course, also quite, right, playing their cards quite carefully. They had supported Ho in his struggle against the French. They provided support for the formation of the Viet Cong, but they have not always been as active in Asia. And of course, the Sino-Soviet split would have, let me just put support formation of Viet Cong, Vietcong. All right, but the Sino-Soviet split proved to be an interesting change of events. I mean, we're not really looking at why it took place, the Sino-Soviet split. It was a long time coming, some may say. The Cuban Missile Crisis definitely worsened the split. All right. In any case, it actually meant that both sides were competing or jostling to see who would be the leader of the communist bloc. All right. So there's a competition as to who would lead the communist bloc, and actually, the North Vietnamese leadership could actually easily, or did actually use this to their advantage, all right, because they knew how best to tap onto these two superpowers that both China and Soviet Union. China provided support like labor, resources, whereas Soviet Union gave support in terms of more modern weapons, such as aircrafts, air defenses, surface-to-air missiles. All right, so getting the best of both worlds, really. China actually provided labor to build bridges, to build defensive positions and all that, but not active soldiers. All right, but the war was mainly fought, or almost entirely fought by the Vietnamese, by the Viet Cong and the NVA, at least for the side of the communists. Which leaves us with America. Okay, we know America. All right, they are of course still committed to containment, domino theory, all right, which is the fear that Soviet Union or communism will actually spread, and the countries will fall like dominoes, and then all subscribe to communism. So that was the fear that they had. All right, you have different leaders coming in with different prerogatives. JFK took over in 1961, and Kennedy was more cautious. He did not want America to blunder into war, unclear about aims or how to get out again. So in the 1960s, at least under JFK, from 1961, it was a lot of military advisors. All right, they want to show their support. In the form of military advisors. In the form of maybe this one is good for you to know. MACV, which is the Military Assistance Command Vietnam. All right. Then in 61, you have LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson. Sorry, 1963, because JFK was assassinated, the vice president became president. He was faced with the same challenge, all right, to support and save the South Vietnamese without being involved. So maximum, like I said, maximum outcome with minimum input. That's always what America is looking for. Johnson, LBJ, was obviously somebody who was more prepared to actually be more involved in Vietnam. There's also the argument that this inferiority complex, whereby he coming in as president without having won the elections himself, the desire to actually do more to compensate, and of course in 1963, and the situation was a lot more complex with the assassination of Diem by the South Vietnamese military leaders. So things were spinning out of control. So from America's point of view, it looks like the war was, okay, it did not look like the South Vietnamese were in a dominant position. It looks very chaotic. So America would have been more and more tempted, right? So which brings us to this question about why America eventually got involved, right? What's the reason? Why? What did they see to be how did they suddenly decide to get involved? Was it yep, all this could be one reason, right? Domino theory, containment, you can easily use this as one reason, or you can think of, on the other side, was it simply the Gulf of Tonkin incident, all right, that really forced America's hand, all right? So the Gulf of Tonkin incident, let's put it here. I'm going to put it, yeah, so America quite a lot, So Gulf of Tonkin incident, all right, really forced America's hand in, actually stationing ground troops there. The gist of the incident would be that North Vietnamese patrol boats had attacked American destroyer USS Maddox, all right, giving them the perfect excuse to actually send soldiers in. America went in to the war, of course, with their allies, Australia, Britain, New Zealand, and South Korea. The all right, USS Maddox. Right. So just some details so that you know direct US intervention. So America was able to get involved or intervene without actually declaring war, because technically this was something that was couched in slightly ambiguous language, where America was able to send in soldiers in order to defend their interests. Okay, so really send in forces is quite vague. Is it a full-scale war? Is it just a defense force? Yeah, so things like that made it quite vague. Okay, next up, we have the developments of the war itself. And normally this set of content, the developments of the war, over here, developments of the Vietnam War, here would be where you find information regarding what led to America's defeat or America's withdrawal. Okay, you try to look for details to help you explain that. Right, so this third central idea, and the war itself, all right, from 65 to 67, the initial stages, a lot of bombings, right, from America, trying to tap onto their massive advantage in firepower against battle-hardened NVA and Viet Cong, and the nature of the war would be such that the Americans and the South Vietnamese, were fighting soldiers they could hardly actually see, right? So it was difficult for them to how to classify your success. How do you define that you are doing very well, right? So let's just look at this one here. Let's look at differences in their strategies, all right? So first up, the NVA and the Viet Cong. Okay, I would just say the Viet Cong. Okay, their strategy was guerrilla warfare. All right, they avoid large-scale battles. It did not help them to be involved in large-scale battles where their inferior military supplies and their weapons would put them at a disadvantage. So it made sense for them to employ guerrilla tactics, not wearing uniforms, right, so that they always have the element of surprise as well. Okay, that was their strategy, as opposed to America, whose strategy was very much heavy bombing. All right, they had their Operation Rolling Thunder, where they wanted to disrupt North Vietnamese suppliers of to the Viet Cong. All right, so they bombed heavily North Vietnamese cities, factories, army bases, Viet Cong strongholds in South Vietnam, and the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Yeah, so basically, if you were to see footage of the war at this point of time, you just simply see American planes bombing various parts of Vietnam, right? Yeah, so that was one. And support from population, the next bit here. Yeah, Ho knew how important it was to win over the population. He understood. He always encourage his troops. I mean, you can only encourage your troops to respect and help the peasants to show that you are a force for good, force for liberation. Having said that, they would kill you if they find out that you are helping the other side. So the Viet Cong did kill civilians as well. As well, meaning, yeah, the Americans did the same thing too. America, of course, didn't start off with a lot of support as compared to the Viet Cong. Right, and America's search and destroy missions were hugely unpopular. Right, right. The use of defoliants, right, like Agent Orange, the use of napalm, all caused serious problems. Right, and the My Lai incident could actually be part of search and destroy, because the My Lai massacre was part of a search and destroy mission gone terribly wrong. So yeah, this was America's strategy. They felt compelled to do search and destroy because really they couldn't find the enemies that easily. So the next best option would be to look for them and then hunt them down. Then the fact that the Viet Cong were not wearing uniforms, right, added to that fog of war, making it very hard for them to actually see past, and of course the frustration of being there. America's soldiers, this was the first war that America fought with draftees and not with a volunteer army. At World War II, they were all volunteers. They chose to be in the war. Okay, they were filled with patriotism and a sense of purpose. Okay, if you're drafted into the war, it's really not the same, right? So all this played into the American morale as well. Okay, American morale. Okay, maybe here I should put. I mean, you all should know this is a USA kind of strategy, and American morale was high at the beginning. I mean, they were there for they've heard stories, and soldiers have heard stories of their parents, their uncles, their older brothers being involved in war. So they felt, oh, this was their time. So they came in. Some of them coming in with a sense of purpose. All right. However, the bulk were young and inexperienced. Okay, there were many things wrong with the way America recruited people for this particular war. We don't have the time to look into it. And the problem was also that because of how media captured this particular war, there was no censorship. Therefore, the free reporting of the journalists on the ground, right, over time, when you see the civilian casualties mounting up, right, it's apparent that, or it's increasingly apparent that America was not fighting a war in the same kind of just war as they did in World War II. So the soldiers coming back were felt or saw themselves as no longer war heroes, and this also played a demoralizing effect on the American soldiers. As compared to the Vietnamese soldiers, for the Viet Cong, they were motivated. Okay, war of liberation. Yeah, that was a very powerful force, and they know it's really win or die. Trying. There's no losing. They don't want to go back to a situation whereby there are foreigners in Vietnam running the country. The Vietnamese soldiers would know that, right? They understood that. I mean, the Viet Cong soldiers understood that. Okay, so this brings us to the Tet Offensive over here. Right, Tet Offensive was a turning point. Tet was a New Year holiday, and during this holiday, the Viet Cong fighters had attacked over 100 cities using the Ho Chi Minh Trail, involving 80,000 Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army troops. Bitter fighting in city of Hue. Costly for the communists. All right, the military, the scale of it is that they were defeated, but they, despite being defeated at the end, the Vietnamese or the Viet Cong, they didn't held on to any of the cities and any of the targets. I mean, went into the American embassy compound and whatnot, but it was still a defeat. They lost more soldiers. They didn't capture anything. People of South Vietnam didn't come in to support the Viet Cong, but the effect it had was still very substantial. All right, it raised, it caused America to ask very tough questions about the war. All right, the narrative at that point of time was that the war was going very well. Okay, and here we are. All right, the shifting sentiments in America is that you have invested so much, 500,000 troops, 20 billion a year, and then you are caught by surprise. Your intel is not working, and they were hanging on for dear life, trying to hold on to some of the towns and the cities. So definitely, you were talking about how the war was coming to an end soon, American involvement is coming to an end soon, and then you were faced with this reality. The sentiment in America definitely was against the war, right? So it was the first televised war, right? So this role of the media, the first televised war, first TV war, right? The first time war was captured in this manner. Journalists could get access to the war. They could go to the war zones, interviews, regular reports, and important figures like respected figures like Walter Cronkite, who was initially such a huge, who was supportive of American involvement, increasingly became negative. All right, and this was how it was done was that there's no filter at all. There's no Pentagon trying to control information. These journalists on the ground, they will just simply capture the story, send it to, I think, a studio in Hong Kong, that it will be shown on to America. Yeah, so the journalists were convinced that the war had inflicted a heavy price on it was a gruesome war, unwinnable war, and the idea was that the people started to question, like, why were they there in the first place, right? So the rising anti-war sentiment was, of course, worsened by the My Lai massacre. Right, we don't have time to say too much about it. We probably spoke about it quite a fair bit. Close to 500 South Vietnamese civilians were killed. All right, with instructions along the lines of shoot anything that moves. All right, so again, all this had a deep and profound impact on how America saw the war, how they viewed the war, and the uniqueness of the American system was that the president had to pay attention to the sentiments of the people because they want to win elections at all costs. All right, so some of the key things that was some key impacts of the war was that for LBJ, he concluded that war was unwinnable militarily. All right, and he was very keen on peace talks. All right, even from the time of LBJ, keen on peace talks. Okay, and he announced he won't be standing for re-elections. Yeah. So both during the 68 elections, both 69, 68 or 69 election, both candidates were both trying to campaign on the fact that they will be withdrawing or lowering American involvement and then Vietnamizing the war, meaning handing over the war to their South Vietnamese counterparts. And this was really, yes, you need to factor in the fact that there was a presidential election that affected things. Both of them were campaigning hard on this, and the impact was that they were looking to Vietnamization of the war, and withdraw troops and move into the Paris Peace Accords. Okay, this was in 1973. So, being able to understand why America decided to pursue this option is really because of their mindset at that point of time after the Tet Offensive, especially how they saw that there's no end game to this war, and the end game would have to include the possibility of it taking this particular shape or form, whereby they would have to withdraw and then hand over to their ally. Okay, that was a face-saving way out. Okay, all politicians try to look for a face-saving way out. All right, 1973, the Paris Peace Accords. Some of the interesting things about it. Okay, the American forces will withdraw. You will exchange your prisoners of war, and in South Vietnam, the Viet Cong would get to keep their positions. So it was this very uneasy arrangement, from one standpoint. There was peace, there was a ceasefire, but the South Vietnamese, the Viet Cong did not retreat back into the North Vietnam. So you had the Viet Cong operating in South Vietnam, the South Vietnamese army also there, and it seemed very likely that it was only a matter of time before the North Vietnamese started their military operations. So this was in December 1975. They launched a major offensive. 1974. NVA launched a major offensive into Saigon, right? Before long, the South Vietnamese president gave up. Saigon fell rapidly. You have images of American forces scrambling to withdraw. It was, all in all, a communist victory. Other impacts of the Tet Offensive. What happened to American allies who were there? It wasn't a massive slaughter. The South Vietnamese allies of America were sent to re-education camps when the communists won. All right, and then the country was finally reunited, and then became known as the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. And from then on, they aligned themselves quite strongly to Soviet Union to continue to receive aid from them. I think relations with China had actually taken a hit. Right. Last bit, the damage of the aftermath of the war, the impact of the Vietnam War, damage to American Cold War foreign policy. American prestige was affected. There was domestic self-doubt, and it also encouraged America to relook at how they conducted their external involvements. Okay, so yeah, some of the ideas that were transparent or that came across at the end, the damage to America's image. America's ideology. It was, the campaign against the communists was depicted as a moral crusade to show that their ideology was better, but the atrocities committed by America, the use of chemical weapons, undoubtedly damaged their reputation. America had failed to enact containment. meaning it was a failure of containment. They were supposed to keep at least the South Vietnam free of communism. They did not. And also one of the impact of Vietnam War was that the powers of the president was reduced, right? Because they noticed how, the president was able to exercise quite a lot of military power. Towards the end of the war, America Congress introduced the War Powers Act to limit the powers of the president. Okay, another outcome was the other implications. I mean, we don't want to be too American centric. In Asia itself, the formation of ASEAN also came amidst the Vietnam War. ASEAN declared themselves declared Southeast Asia as a zone of peace, friendship, and neutrality. And the idea was to keep ASEAN free from foreign interference. There was initially fears that communism would spread, the dominant theory would take shape in Southeast Asia. It did not, and it did usher eventually a period of stability. I would say it wasn't. Southeast Asia was not stable in the 1970s, with Cambodia and Laos also facing issues as well. Okay, the last bit for Deton. All right, the war affected American policies towards communist states. America tried to improve its relations. America needed Soviet support or Soviet help to actually sign the Paris Peace Treaty. And subsequently, we are going to learn in the next chapter the successful signing of anti-ballistic missile treaties, the SALT strategic arm limitation talks in 1972 were successful, and over time, America also allowed China's entry into the United Nations. This was under President Nixon. So, on both fronts, America's relations improved with Soviet Union. America's relations improved with China. I guess it's also a bit out of necessity. They needed their help to get certain things done. All right, so that brings me to the end. I think this is way too long already. All right, I'll stop here.